Hi everyone, I'm Kaius with a K. Honestly, the only thing more intriguing to me than unused characters in games is characters in games who were never real to begin with. There's a reason why things like Herobrine and Screpulous Fingor are so popular and intriguing to people. So imagine this in a genre like fighting games where, as I've said before, characters are reflective of their players and uniquely define a player experience in a way where very few other genres do. When you pick a character or team before a match in a fighting game, you're locked into that character or team. There's no pick banning, no hero switching, and for the most part there's no secondary or tertiary items like potions, firearms, or car parts to shift your character's balance around. You're with that character until the bell rings, and that's why I like characters in fighting games so damn much. Characters appeal to the fantasy of the fighting game player and can build upon a world where characters aren't often given lore outside of a few sentences and their endings. So it's no surprise that arcade goers were scrambling to figure out more about characters like Reptile and Akuma, because these characters were expanding on a world players only had a brief window into prior, pushing their imagination further and further with new mysteries. Or maybe I'm just waxing eloquent and green ninjas and evil shotos are just pretty cool. Back in the day, fighting game rumors and hoaxes used to be cool. However, the sentiment behind creating a fun hoax has pretty much completely dissipated, and now we're stuck with boring bogus like 4chan green text leaks and posts on r/gaming leaks and rumors that are clearly just thinly veiled wish lists. We used to have to work to prove these things were false like a real society. Now we just have to rely on stupid bullshit like common sense and reason. Fuck off! So here's the part where I cue us in. Blah blah blah, I'm going to go through these in a casual yet informative manner. Blah blah blah, no Smash Bros because you could make an entirely separate video out of that and people probably already have. Blah blah blah. Before I start diving into the actual hoaxes, let me cover some ground I didn't cover in my last video, namely Mortal Kombat Gold's Belloc. There's actually a very good reason I didn't include him last time.
You wanna know why? Because I didn't think of it.
Yeah, I forgot, my bad folks. Anyway, Sheng Long is a character so well documented that there is a Wikipedia page literally documenting how documented he is. There is a chance that Sheng Long might be one of the most discussed video game hoaxes of all time, and if not, he's certainly one of the earliest instances of one. Ryu's win quote in English versions of Street Fighter 2 is, "You must defeat Sheng Long to stand a chance." Sheng Long sounds like the name of a character, and that's because the person translating this quote most likely didn't actually realise that the characters they were translating were referring to Ryu's Shoryuken technique and instead interpreted them literally as Sheng Long. Of course, Ryu's Japanese win quote, "Shoryuken wo yabu no kagari omae ni katsumi wa nai," simply translates to, "If you cannot overcome my Shoryuken, you cannot win." But as easy as it is now to see that this is the case, it's obviously not so easy to key into this in the cool spring of 1991, when this rumour took off. And oh boy, did it take off! Electronic Gaming Monthly perhaps had the most infamous domino push in this regard, mostly in thanks to one Ken Williams, who loved Street Fighter 2 and the rumours surrounding it, and also now newly had access to Adobe Photoshop. The story, as you can imagine, is pretty long. But the most important part of it is the end result. These images were printed in Electronic Gaming Monthly's April 1992 issue as their April Fool's joke and explained his gameplay, which consisted of insane damage, a flaming Shoryuken, red fireballs that could move faster than Sagat's with no recovery, and a whirlwind kick like Chun-Li's, but deadlier. He could also air throw you, so that's cool. This was all put alongside an article explaining how to unlock the fight against Sheng Long, which was so obtuse and ridiculous that no one would fall for it. I mean, winning every match without taking damage? Sure, that's one thing, but 10 draw games in a row with no damage against Bison? No one would fall for that, right? Especially not, say, literally the entire worldwide gaming press. Yeah. The entire world gobbled this gossip up. To the people of planet Earth, Sheng Long was real. To arcade owners, Sheng Long was breaking cabinets due to the overwhelming amount of coins being inserted. To Capcom USA, Sheng Long was surprised they needed to interrogate Capcom Japan about. Other gaming magazines worldwide were reporting on this hoax as if it was true. The fires just kept burning and burning until December of that year, where EGM had to tell everyone it was a hoax. EGM did the same hoax a few years later for Street Fighter 3, but it was a much more tongue-in-cheek April Fool's gag, likely as not to cause the wildfire that they caused before, even trailing off into an ellipses before they get to any of the important details. However, the spirit of Sheng Long lives on. No, really, there are literal fragments of Sheng Long's very soul spread throughout the Street Fighter series. Though it's never been an outright stated cause and effect relationship, there's reason to believe that the Sheng Long hoax not only inspired Akuma, but also Ken's flaming Shoryuken technique, and even Goken, a super secret character who debuted 15 years later in SF4, who shares his name with the alias given to Sheng Long by EGM in their Street Fighter 3 version of the Sheng Long prank. This version of Goken even lives up to the April Fool's prank, with ridiculous damage output, a powerful whirlwind kick, and even a command grab that he can only use in the air. Seriously, this character is so fun. Capcom, please put this guy in Street Fighter 6. Anyway, let's talk about MK. If you know anything about MK, you know that we are going to be here for a while because we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's not waste any time. Ermac is obviously the most reasonable starting point to have for this kind of retrospective, because his story has a pretty obvious point of origin. The audit screen from the first MK game lists something known as an Ermac under the number of times players using the machine fought Reptile. This made people speculate that there was an Ermac in the game's expansive roster of chromatic shinobi. To keep a long story short, an Ermac was short for an error macro, and to make a short story long, prior to the release of the original Mortal Kombat in arcades, Edwin wrote an assembler macro to call the necessary functions for logging instances of sections of the arcade version software or code that in practice should never be called upon or otherwise executed. In other words, code that was called upon in error. The assembler macro primarily existed to keep the logs of these issues shorter and easier to troubleshoot. This macro was then added to the game audit screen to make the counter significantly easier to check in arcades and shortened to Ermacs. In the event where erroneous code was called upon, the Ermac's counter would be incremented and logged in the game's audit screen. Of course, because of the aforementioned placement under Reptile fights, there started a huge rumour mill regarding some dude named Ermac who could be fought by doing something or other. People would never agree on one specific method to fight Ermac, probably because there was none, but the most popular one comes from a letter sent to Electronic Gaming Monthly because of fucking course it's Electronic Gaming Monthly. I am a big fan of the arcade game, Mortal Kombat. In fact, I can be anybody I have ever played. I was the first kid in my neighbourhood to find Reptile. About 6 months ago, I was playing, and before the fight started, this red ninja jumped on screen and said, I will fight you near the statues. About a week ago, I was playing against my friend, Bob Shields, and we were both playing Johnny Cage. I beat him double flawless victory using only punches. Then suddenly, the red ninja jumped on my screen and said, I am Ermac, you will never defeat me. He kicked my hashtag, and then the game said, Ermac wins. Bob had a Polaroid camera with him, but the store was dark and the picture didn't come out very good. Exactly how do you fight Ermac, because we keep trying to get him to come back. I think it has something to do with the warrior shrine. Has anybody else found him? I think this particular Polaroid photo of Ermac is probably what influenced his red colour palette, or as a result of a rumour that Ermac could be created by causing an error macro in the Mega Drive version of MK1, which turned Scorpion's palette to red, but this obviously wasn't possible. But it could also be that he was the only of the 4 psychological primary colours to be absent from the game's ninja roster. Whoa, psychological primary colours, advanced colour theory in a case video, I am very smart, and single too. Obviously, Ermac is now playable in most MK games. In his older appearances, he did actually have some of Scorpion's moves, like his teleport punch, so I think Midway definitely knew about these rumours more intimately than they ever let on with Mortal Kombat 2's Ermac does not exist and Ermac who Easter eggs. Next, Nimbus Terrafol, a character whose origins seem to kinda be up in the air, as while he's believed to be an April Fool's gag by fucking Electronic Gaming Monthly again, this character's mentions actually date back to EGM's December 1993 issue. It has been said that there is a kickboxer named Nimbus Terrafol hidden in the Genesis version of the game. Here are the details. Supposedly, you are to wait for Reptile to come onto the screen and say, "Look to La Luna." At this point, you're to put in some sort of code and press start before he leaves the screen. This most wanted trick wouldn't be elaborated on until the March 1994 issue, which is where the more infamous images of Nimbus showed up. Looking at this first image of him performing a fatality, it's crazy how anyone at EGM could have believed this image was real. I mean, just look at him, he's fucking massive and he takes up like half the screen real estate. They should add this guy to Mortal Kombat and he should be anatomically accurate, like you should not be allowed to jump over this guy. Then there's MK2. The first one to talk about here is probably Robin, or Red Robin. Because he's pretty easy to get out of the way. He's in a rumour mill section of an MK2 official player's guide, but the text to the corner of it says the images here were doctored. And there's nothing else about this rumour anywhere online, other than that he plays like Scorpion and that he throws good. Palette swapping is out of control! It sure is. Game Informer also said that there was a character called Emerald as one of 5 hidden characters. Notably, this article didn't actually know the existence of Noob Saibot, despite the fact that he was arguably one of the easiest hidden characters to unlock in that game. Anyway, this was just a green Melina. Oh, like Jade? No. You don't get it. This was a green Melina. She was Melina-ish, just like how Smoke was a raiding color swap. Oh, yeah, this one comes out the woodwork, sacrificing its credibility. There's also no details about the way Emerald played, but I assume that she was a projectile immune character like the other secret characters, and that she can also summon a giant laser rifle to melt you, and you can't say that this is fake because Game Informer never disproved that, and you haven't found Emerald in MK2 yet, so start looking. Lastly, for MK2, I should at least give honourable mention to Hornbuckle, alluded to by Jade as a nonsense name, but then thought to be this green Liu Kang fighting a burning guy in the Pit 2, who would turn out to be Blaze in later games. Then, in regards to UMK3, we have the fire farting Pedro, purported to exist by the Computer and Video Games magazine in the UK, and described in a way that is not very flattering, calling his clothing disgusting. But apparently Shao Kahn said his name with a Mexican accent, which, you can't be talking like that, Outworlder. And then there is, to me, the pièce de résistance of fake MK fighters, Aqua from Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and Oni/Ninja/Cyborg/Duck, featured in the official UK PlayStation magazine in some screenshots and briefly glossed over. There were also allegedly a win quote, Aqua wins, and an entire ending found in the files of the disc itself, but only certain copies, in certain regions. And I don't know how to say this, but this hoax was in itself a hoax. Yeah, so these magazine scans are edited, and the original magazine doesn't actually have any of these or mention Aqua at all, which I know because I read this magazine. Unless there are earlier print copies of this magazine that I don't have access to, but that's really wishful thinking considering magazines don't usually reprint like that. The second scan is said to come from the Australian 2000 PlayStation Collector's Edition? Yeah, that's really vague and I'm not even sure that magazine exists, but I did track down its source to a most trusted and unbiased locale, an Angel Fire site inconspicuously named MKT Aqua, with this beautiful blurb that reads, Mortal Kombat Trilogy Aqua is real!
This is to all the noobs who didn't...
Oh god, I can't do that voice. This is to all the noobs who didn't believe me about Aqua. I got a new scanner and this pic is from the year 2000 official Australian PlayStation Collector's Edition of the 100 best PlayStation games. The best mag from the best country, Australia! Lol. This is from the article Classic Gaming Moments, and there it is at number 17. I did a big scan so all the noobs can STFU, it is plain as day. In the pic it clearly says, Aquilixborg hydroxybot is stirred from hibernation by a disturbance caused by Shao Kahn's invasion of Earth. He awakens from his self-imposed exile to discover that he is the sole survivor of his ancient water race. LMFAO. So who's lying now, noobs? LOL.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Let's take a detour before I close off into some of the odds and ends. This Tekken Tag Tournament 2 April Fool's joke isn't going to come up in any vid I make again, and I need to talk about it because why is she fucking crucified? Help! Omega Hayachi! And this actually very interesting KOF 2002 rumour. A GameCube port for the game that could allegedly connect to KOF EX2 with a link cable to unlock Reiji Ogami and Moe Habana as playable characters, as well as one other character that this magazine claims as Kyo of the Flame, so presumably a Flames Kyo, but KOF 95 Kyo is represented already as Kusanagi, so shrugs. The Reiji sprites on display here are pretty cool, and I wish I had a higher quality scan, but that would defeat the purpose of a fake leak now, wouldn't it? So this is probably a Mugen build of some sort, knowing how many KOF customs there are for that engine. A GameCube console port with exclusive characters from the KOF EX games is such a cool idea. I'm not a huge fan of console exclusive characters for a number of reasons, but having the Game Boy Advance spin-off characters be exclusive to Nintendo ports of the main series is actually a really interesting concept to latch onto this early on. Especially given that 5 years later Mortal Kombat would actually do this exact same thing by making the N64 exclusive trilogy character Chameleon also an exclusive character to the Nintendo Wii version of Mortal Kombat Armageddon. So yeah, that's all the rumours I wanted to talk about. There are definitely more, especially because the late 90s and early 2000s were such a word of mouth era for the rumour mill in general, and not a lot of interesting rumours actually make it to the point of online notoriety. When I was a little kid about 7 or 8 years old, an upperclassman told me about how he unlocked Lloyd Irving and Deadpool in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and at the time I didn't own Melee or know all of its secrets, so I just had to hold that. For the longest time, I also believed that Mega Man X and Leona Hyderin were in Capcom vs SNK 2, so Capcom needs to start taking notes for the inevitable CVS 3 and watch this video. Please God, why was she not in CVS 2? Please add Leona to another CVS game. Nowadays, false rumours in fighting games aren't really all that they used to be. In the late 2000s, you could just stick any realistically textured render of a character onto a Frutiger Aero Cyan Gradient and pass it off as a legit brawl leak. Now all you gotta do is make a post on Reddit bullet pointing a bunch of choices and posting thinly veiled fanfiction of what you think went through the devs' minds when they made a decision that you completely made up. Any visual leak we do get of fighting games nowadays is an off-screen camera grab of a character select with a random fake character put in there. Or in the case of Tekken 8, this complete AI slop with this like cunty Alisa that also has like 14 billion different text strings. Terrible job, great work everybody. But sometimes you get the real deal, like when Mortal Kombat added another palette swap ninja whose battle conditions were randomized per player, meaning the rumour mill was actually harder to nail down for casual players because the conditions behind the character were actually mutually exclusive, though the full conditions were data mined within a week, so hey. This decline in the rumour mill is mostly because we live in an era where information is so easy to disprove, and things like Snopes and community notes exist for better or worse, where someone can actually anything they want and get rewarded with meaningless internet points. But I will forever yearn for the day where I can put my French bread styled sprite in a screenshot of a French bread game, send it to a magazine, and have them post it completely unironically, completely ruining my credibility as an honest, factually driven creator. I'd like to give a special thanks to Jericho, Mick X Cat, Penrost, Phenomenal, and Typho for their support on Patreon this month. This month's bonus feature is an uncompressed version of the video's thumbnail with a lot of extra details like the little news articles that are written on it. I didn't have a lot of time to work this month, so I hope that the bonus stuff for immersion on the thumbnail is worth it. Alright, I will see you guys next month. Bye!